PH.d TV, and today I will be giving you my personal rankings of the Harry Potter movies, not counting the Fantastic Beasts series. Coming in the last place is Deathly Hallows Part 2. It's a fine movie, it's fun. I saw it in theaters just like I saw all the other ones, but to be honest, it felt like a setup movie for Part 2, which was just a better film in general. Kind of like one of those movies where even though it's not a trilogy, the middle one is kind of odd because all it's doing is being a sequel to the first and a setup for the third. It's just kind of there to set things up. It's entertaining, it's fun, but it's just kind of there to set Part 2 up. So it's last place out of the 8. Now I do want to say that all of these movies are great.
I think it's brilliant.
And they have all aged like fine wine for the most part. So even with Part 2 being in last place, that's not saying much because they're all great. In 7th place, we have Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Great movie, fun, but it is long. It is a very long movie, but one thing that does have going for it, and for me, I enjoyed these movies most when it was about the kids and the magic and figuring out who they were as characters before it really became about the whole war against Voldemort. And 2, this one is much more of a general, kind of like a murder mystery type setup, obviously without actual murder, but it is definitely a mystery that is intriguing, but it's just overly long because at the time, that's when they were trying to get every single detail from the book into the movie. I think it could have been trimmed up a little bit in the cutting room floor, but hey, that's okay. It's still, as I said, none of these movies are really bad. Which brings me to 6th place, which is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, where ironically, if I'm not mistaken, it's the longest book, but also the shortest movie. Whereas, it's kind of one of those where I know I just said they probably could have left some on the cutting room floor for, the Chamber of Secrets. This is one where I probably would not have minded it to have been a little bit longer. And to me, the finale where they're fighting in the Ministry of Magic, that is by far probably the best in terms of how they did it. Fight sequence, wizard battle that they had in the entire franchise. Glass shattering, water moving, fire roaring from all the spells they're doing. To me, it was an intense scene and it ages well. And 2, you have the teenage angst of what it's like to be a teenager again. Harry Potter has his first kiss on screen. He's crushing on Cho, I believe is what her name was. And you see them still have that magic. Now, of course, there's the politics of Harry trying to make everyone believe that Voldemort is still alive, that he exists, that he's very real, and that he's back. But ultimately, you still have that experience of him going through what growing up in his situation is like. So with that being said, it's a good movie, and it's massively entertaining, and David Yates, I believe is what the director's name is, he came in, wowed everybody with his style in terms of the franchise because he's doing them even now with the Fantastic Beasts franchise. But there's a lot to be said for what was lost to the fact that it's the shortest movie but the biggest book. Then we have The Deathly Hallows Part 2. Grand finale to this 8-movie series that had been going from the early 2000s and into really the next decade. And it was a blast. It was one epic finale that paid off wonderfully, and truthfully, it was very satisfying. Not all franchises can stick the landing whenever they make that final movie. Sometimes it's anticlimactic, sometimes it's too climactic and overblown. This one hit the sweet spot, especially when Harry and the gang are seeing their children go to Hogwarts for the first time, and the music that played from the first movie, especially when I was like 7 when the first movie came out, then I'm in my late teens watching it, it's just full circle. Complete full circle in terms of story, complete full circle in terms of emotional satisfaction to what they were accomplishing for an entire decade. It was an accomplishment all to its own, so it's really more one of those, it's a sweet spot movie. That's really the best way to put it. Going into the upper half with 4th place is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. What makes that one special is very similar to the 5th one where they kind of start looking into teenage angst of being a teenager, especially in Hogwarts, but really grounding these characters as human characters who just happen to be wizards. And I will say that is a testament to what makes movies like this really good was because they didn't make a movie about wizards who just happen to have all teenage angst and all these things. They made movies about teenagers who have these abilities and have this magic inside them, but they're human at the end of the day. They're teenagers that no matter if they're in the middle of a wizardry war with Voldemort or if they're going through classes, they're still kids ultimately in high school trying to figure things out. While also having a really good concept of what mystery is, trying to find out who the Half-Blood Prince is, jealousies, romance. You know, it's a good blend. And two, the cinematography in this one's just beautiful. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe this is the one Harry Potter movie that got an Academy Award nomination for Best Cinematography. And debatably, I would go as far as to say this is probably Daniel Radcliffe's best performance as Harry Potter. And two, the emotional moments such as, I don't think it's a spoiler alert at this point, but even the death of Dumbledore is still emotionally, impactful to the fact of who he was to Harry and who he really is to the audience. As this gentle, teacherly, grandfatherly figure who's there for Harry when he had no parents. Similar to how our attachments are to Hagrid and, McGonagall. But to see that climax of something so bitterly sweet was really just something special to the fact of the game really changed for these characters, creating character development, which honestly makes for a good movie to me, because I'm one of those people, when I watch a movie, if the character doesn't evolve, I'm not really gonna like the movie as much as I probably could. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince gets an A+ for me. That's a great one, but I do have three I like a little bit better. In the top three, third place, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Or Philosopher's Stone, depends where you're at. What's to say about this one? So first of all, it's the first one. It establishes the world, one that we kept up for a decade. The score by John Williams, which the score's up there with Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and pretty much any other theme he ever made, because if there's a famous theme for a movie, chances are he probably did it. We get to go to platform 9 3/4 for the first time. Hogwarts is alive, it's breathing. The staircase, let's put it this way, everything, if you are someone who's been to Universal Studios and has gone to, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and Hogwarts, I apologize if y'all hardcore fans are gonna kill me for butchering what Universal calls it, I've been there once. But everything that you have seen there, if you've ever been, because of the production design that they did from the very first movie, and the music that you know and hum is because of the first movie. And two, yes, we hear about Voldemort, but you know what? The movies aren't quite about the war yet between Voldemort and Harry and the Horcruxes. The politics of being a wizard in that battle is not established. So it's just about being an eye through Harry that, you know what? He's a wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry.
And what would you do if that happened to you? It's about the magic, it's about the world, it's about going to the classes and learning Leviosa versus Leviosa, and as well as the chess match, Fluffy the three-headed dog, and everything that we know for the next 7 movies following this one is thanks to this one. And as the music swells, as the Hogwarts Express is leaving the castle for the last time in the movie, chills. And it's honestly, I'll be completely honest, it's probably a nostalgic choice for me because I saw it when the movie first came out and I grew up with them. So with that being said, number 3 is the very first one, the Sorcerer's Stone. And now my number 2 pick is actually probably the one I would vote to say is my most, or at least I would say for me is the most entertaining, is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And at the time that I saw this one, I was going to the movies and these theaters were getting more packed and packed and packed and packed. And I had to sit in the very first row. And I'm not talking the first row of the big section of the theater, but say this is the big section, then you have that small and then the screen. I was probably right here and I just had to look straight up to watch this movie. But the thing is, I remember enjoying it thoroughly, even through the neck cramp throughout the whole thing, because they started to take risks all of a sudden. Prisoner of Azkaban, which obviously is gonna be was a little darker, a little bit more mature. This one was the first PG-13 Harry Potter where they decided to take risks, amp the action up. This one was kind of like the, better way to put it, the action thriller Harry Potter movie. If Sorcerer's Stone was the origin story, Chamber of Secrets was the murder mystery, Prisoner of Azkaban was the time travel movie, this one was the action thriller style movie for me, because when watching the movie, if you really watch it, it really is action packed throughout. Because where you see other action, scenes from the future movies to come, they're more like action scenes set in a franchise, whereas the overall feeling of this movie feels like the action movie Harry Potter movie. Where it just got a little bit darker to the point to where Cedric Diggory, a student, a minor, is unfortunately killed at the end. On top of that, you are actually seeing quite a bit of blood in this movie. I mean, you see him get scraped and scratched in the previous films, but you don't see blood drip, you don't see blood actually that often in comparison. But here, you literally see Harry Potter, a minor, getting cut in the arm by a grown wizard man, Voldemort, just to see a Voldemort-looking fetus get dropped in a cauldron, surrounded by followers who are just kind of creepy looking. You get what I'm saying? They decided to go a little darker, and right where the series is, to me, sweet spot came, because as they got older, as the war officially started with this movie technically by the end of it, this was just, to me, the entertainment factor that just wins me over. And two, you start seeing that teenage angst that I was talking about with the fifth movie and the sixth movie. And really, it just alludes to it perfectly, because now these kids are thinking relationships, crushes, thinking about how do we talk to girls and how do we talk to boys. And you see these kids just in the middle of these wizardly Olympic style games wonder, how can we mingle, who's gonna win, how they do this, how they do that, how are we gonna get through these games. I'm rambling, but you get the idea. This is the fun, energetic action movie Harry Potter for me. And obviously the last one's gonna be Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and I think it's a pretty shared agreement with the majority of the fans, this is the best one. And now with it being the best one, that is gonna be a subjective opinion, but I do think the reason most people would say this is the best one is because it's right in a good soft spot of not being too long, not being too short. It involves great performances all around, and Daniel Radcliffe, who played Harry Potter, is still in puberty, but he doesn't have that weird raspy voice he had in the second movie, but he's really coming into his own. Even if the acting was not great in certain scenes, you have other actors to kind of come in and elevate it, so you can kind of forgive him to the fact that he's a child actor. That's okay. Children can act certain ways, teenagers can act certain ways, so it's forgivable because you're so invested in the story and others' performances. We get to meet Sirius Black for the first time. The idea of time travel is introduced, and why they never brought time travel back again, I couldn't tell you. As well as the director, Alfonso Cuarón, who went to win two Best Director Oscars later on down his career, working with his go-to cinematographer. Again, one of the better shot Harry Potter movies, with a lot of really cool Easter eggs that you can look up that's really nice. This one really sets a really good tone in terms of the darkness that we'll see in the future. Because whereas the Goblet of Fire is the one that kind of amped up where the action would go and the intensity of the movies, this one set the stage for, you know what, this is the dark scale that we're going. There's going to be some darkness, whereas in the first two movies, though there were dark materials in it, they still had this lightheartedness, fit for kids feel. And that might have been because the first two movies were directed by Chris Columbus, who was known for Mrs. Doubtfire and other movies of that such. But when you bring on someone like Alfonso Cuarón, you're gonna have somebody who brings the darkness, a more, not edgy, but more mature style to the films that carried throughout. And honestly, by the time you marry the darkness of Cuarón, the action of Goblet of Fire, and then you bring David Yates on to marry the best of both worlds, there's probably a reason why the next four movies were directed by David Yates. He cracked the code, in my opinion, thanks to the duet of the directors of Goblet of Fire and Prisoner of Azkaban. But Prisoner of Azkaban, to me, I think at the end of the day, just keep it short, even though this at this point really isn't that short. It's just a really good film outside of it being a really good Harry Potter movie. So let me know what you think. Do you agree with my opinions? What's your opinions? Remember, my opinion is not the correct one. It's just an opinion. I'm interested in yours. I want you, if you would like, to drop down below what your ranking for the Harry Potter movies are. What's your favorite? Which ones do you think are the worst? Which of mine do you disagree with? I'd love to be able to have a healthy conversation, and maybe we can chat. I want to get to chat with everybody in the comments if I can. I'll do my best. If it ends up blowing up, I may not be able to catch everybody, but I'll do my best. And until then, please subscribe. If you want me to review or rank any other series, let me know down below as well. And until then, this has been PH.d TV, and I'll see you next time.